Invasive species. Alien apex aggressors able to outcompete any native animal in the ecosystem. Recently, there has been a rash of sightings of strange and uncanny birds. Anomalous researcher Trevor Henderson has uploaded several images depicting this new invasive species that's been devastating the continental United States. Usually, anomalous evidence is confiscated for approval, but Trevor just sticks him up on Instagram. You gotta respect the absolute balls on this man. These creatures resemble regular birds, usually owls, but with no eyes or beak and instead a frighteningly large human-like smile and a set of unkempt teeth. Instead of the owl, it has a range of speech patterns, many of which sound like human vocalizations. Words, moans, and the screams of a person being ripped apart by several owls with human teeth are among the wide range of noises this species is capable of making. Unlike other species who just repeat what they've been told like parrots or political news anchors, it seems like these birds actually understand the meaning of the human language they sometimes vocalize, using it to communicate or frighten hikers.
Your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberry.
While this invasive species typically hunts in a similar fashion to owls, tracking prey solo and capturing it on its own, they also display a social strategy unique to their own species. These creatures will gather together in groups of 5 to 20 and swarm larger animals, overwhelming them with sheer numbers and stripping them down to the bone as quickly as a school of piranha. Everyone's gotta stay in shape to run from the piranha birds. I know I'm healthy because the doctor took my blood and my pee and then switched them. When I was a kid, I always wondered why the doctors needed my pee, and a small part of me thought they drank it. Large collections of bones, both belonging to humans and animals, have been found in abnormally large clusters of owl pellet droppings in the area of these creatures. This may be enough evidence to show that they all poop together as friends. In areas where these invasive species appear, the regular bird variety of this species quickly decline in number, almost as if these creatures target the species they're meant to emulate. This is also backed up by the significantly disproportionate amount of owl bones found in the pellet piles. While this species is most commonly reported mimicking owls, if there are none native to the area, they will select another bird. After clearing every potential suspect for bird bestiality, an investigation was launched into the genetics of this strange specimen. As suspected, there was a combination of both human and avian DNA in each sample found. Even stranger than a human breastfeeding a squirrel. It is unknown where these hybrids have been coming from, but some other phenomena could shed light on the situation. Trevor uploaded another strange avian sample with 2 beaks and no eyes on his Instagram page as well. This provides further evidence to the theory that these creatures come from some sort of man-made source. A prototype, if you will. Even though human scientists are consistently ready, willing, able, and mentally unstable, the man-made theory is not universally accepted. Some believe that these creatures came from natural, or potentially preternatural, anomalous evolutionary processes. These are not the only strange avian varieties that Trevor has cataloged. For example, he recently posted a picture of this bird-like specimen called the mocking nightfisher, displaying a miniature human face. These photos are the only evidence of this specific species, and little is known about them other than the fact that it likely has human DNA and probably came from the same source as the toothy birds. There is one more piece that looks as if it fits into this weird bird mouth puzzle, but it still leaves questions unanswered. For example, would you stick your dick in it? Trevor posted an image depicting an owl-like creature with 2 lamprey mouths for eyes. He titled it Pacific Northwestern Forest Lamprey, stating that it uses carrion as an ambulatory host to propagate and feed. Translation: this worm-like creature hijacks dead owls to fly around, make sexy times, and hunt. Just know if your partner dies and you want one last time with them, go with the rhyme. Shove lampreys in their eyes and brains to say goodbye with a bedsheet stain. What the hell am I talking about again? It is unconfirmed whether or not the invasive species are related to these creatures or if they occurred naturally, but what is certain from the evidence he presents is that there is an increasing number of anomalous avian predators cropping up in multiple ecosystems.
Hey, don't throw your garbage down here!
Locals call her the hag, which she hates, though she can see why. She's a humanoid hagfish that looks like a decayed, waterlogged corpse. She's been around for a long time. She wasn't always like this. She floats face down and waits for people to jump in her pond to drown. This was the only information posted alongside these two images of this newly discovered entity dubbed the Hag. This creature was first reported by the preternatural investigator Trevor Henderson, and in his trademark style, he posted full uncensored anomalous evidence, just spread eagle on Twitter. What a badass. While this is the only info we have to draw off, it does still illuminate quite a bit about this mysterious entity. She's described as a humanoid hagfish, so we can take a look at the non-humanoid analog to understand more about the hag's physiology. I feel bad calling her a hag. You look like an Agatha. I'm calling you Agatha. The hagfish is one of the oldest living fish on the planet. It has a skull but no spine, and tiny holes run the length of its body for breathing and secreting a thick mucus-like slime. Its face sports a jawless mouth lined with rows of razor-sharp jagged teeth, which it uses for slicing through dead fish. These teeth are attached to two bony plates that it can manipulate to tear into corpses. Yummy! The hagfish also has a single nostril which it uses to find dead animals to feed on. You know, if you get past the eating dead bodies and being covered in a viscous slime, she's pretty chill. Makes a mean moonshine out of dead raccoons too. We can also draw on the physical attributes visible in the photo. She seems to have two mouths, one skeletal mouth that looks to be humanoid in structure, and below it, a hagfish-like mouth protruding from the neck. Her skin is obsidian-colored and coated in a thick slime. Again, like a hagfish. Gushy hagfussy. Okay, I'm sorry, I'll leave. From Trevor's description, the woman that the hagfish is puppeting seems to be alive. I mean, it says that she hates locals calling her the hag. Dead people can't hate things. They're busy being dead, idiot. Agatha's consciousness is still functioning, and trapped in her decaying body that now serves as a shell for one of the most f***ed up snot worm hermit crabs ever. If you're a huge fan of the Mans like I am, it would be impossible to see this creature and not notice a thematic similarity to other oddities reported by Trevor Henderson. The phrasing, "she was not always like this," leads one to believe that she was once a human with regular, non-slimy skin and not a neck mouth. In a different video, I covered another phenomenon that Trevor reported on: the invasive species of anomalous birds appearing in the forest ecosystems. One of these creatures, the Pacific Northwestern forest lamprey, reportedly used dead animals as a host by turduckening themselves inside of their holes and worming their way inside their nervous system. It is my theory that some sort of a hagfish-like abomination crawled up inside this lady's guts, but not in the fun way, and now uses her body as a captive meat puppet to feed on the people curious about the bloated corpse. Some anomalous researchers have theorized that this species uses humans to make it seem like they're drowning and attract passerbys, scavengers, and curious kids that want to poke it with a stick. Be honest, wouldn't you try to go help if you saw a body in the water? Yeah, that's what I thought. That's why these f***ers are extinct in NYC. This is the second example of an alarming pattern of these body-snatching parasites. It seems as if this is a subsection of a different species of jawless fish that have been able to manipulate the bodies of living, decaying, and already dead matter through an unknown means. Don't ask me what it is, I didn't know. There have been numerous other alleged sightings of these or similar creatures, but none of them come from as reputable of a source. And some of them look faked, even like an AI made them. I can never get a thing straight because of humans. Can't go anywhere with you f***ers asking the cashier how many feet pics is equivalent to $1 ass, playing which pill is laced with fentanyl for fun, phone screen primate bitch. I looked back and the figure stood outside the main entrance. I felt its eyes on us as the growth sprouting from its head waved and twisted, as if they were caught in some invisible undersea current. This was the only information posted alongside this photograph of what appears to be an anomalous creature. This entity was documented by Trevor Henderson, who rightfully took a dump all over the Foundation's anomaly report process. Who has time for it? It's like going to the DMV. While this might not seem like a lot of information, there are just enough clues in this post to theorize on what this creature could possibly be. One theory I have is that this is an animal in some way related to undersea worms. That sounds a bit far-fetched, but just bear with me here. The head of this person bears a striking resemblance to a few species of undersea worms, and while not a perfect fit, when you take into account the few sentences that Trevor left alongside this image, it begins to make more sense. More specifically, I believe that this entity is an undocumented and possibly anomalous species of Ossidax worm. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm banking that you don't either. Ossidax worms are worms that typically survive by burrowing into whale bones. They have no mouth or internal digestive system, which is refreshing because most of these critters are just full of gross red stuff. These worms rely on a symbiotic bacteria to digest the fats and oils in the bones for them. I believe that this image depicts an Ossidax worm that, through either anomalous or evolutionary means, made the adaptation to prey on humans rather than whales. Of course, this is just one theory, but all I'm saying is, unless I'm mistaken, human heads ain't supposed to look like that, man. Whereas a whale carcass can sustain a micro-ecosystem for years due to its large size, human bodies are not as well endowed. I'm not referring to the fact that whale dicks are 8 to 10 feet on average, and you can Google that. I'm referring to the fact that when an Osedax worm gets into a human's neck, it tends to suck them dry like a fat kid with a Capri Sun. Hence, a human Osedax infestation would likely be fatal. It's unknown how these worm eggs infect their hosts, but similar to the oceanic species of Osedax, it's likely that they have larvae that can latch onto the human head, feasting on the brain of the person first, incapacitating them, and proceeding to use acids to dissolve the rest of the human skeleton in meaty bits. In the water, these larvae move with the current. I see no reason they couldn't use air currents on land as well, floating en masse along the wind until one happens to get in contact with a human, after which they burrow under the skin and make their way to the brain to begin the infestation process. If you're a fan of Trevor Henderson, or of my show for some godforsaken reason, it would be hard to look at this entity and not notice a thematic similarity to several other Trevor Henderson creatures. I believe that undersea current is a different species of parasite that functions similarly to those two entities, although this is a new third style of feeding that is yet to be seen. Whereas the bird and human variants were predatory and scavengers in strategy, using their host to hunt other creatures, this variety has no mouthparts or attacky bits of any kind. It rather acts as a predator in a different fashion. Rather than using its host to feed on other animals, it uses its host like a typical disease does, as an infection transmission vector. Like some sort of STD-based vigilante giving HIV to sex criminals who escape jail time through legal loopholes. Who is my original OC, by the way. Seriously, if you take my idea for the AIDS Avenger, consider yourself a dead man. What the hell am I talking about again? The worm drives its host to go to high population areas, or when that isn't possible, follow individuals. It releases hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to put the individual under stress, and then through unknown means, the worm compels the host to pursue hyperpopulated areas of humanity. The goal of the worm is to get the host in close proximity to as many potential new hosts as possible before its consumption of the human leads it to falling apart. Upon the host's death, the worm can actually continue to move the body, but eventually, feeding on the muscles and bones of the host will limit its mobility. When the human juice box runs out, the worm has no food left, and since it can't move of its own accord, it has one final trick up its foreskin. Like a water balloon, or the condom that led to your creation, the worm-ridden human head will burst, releasing a thick gooey cloud of larvae into the air. Physical contact or inhalation of the worm cum will lead to subsequent infestation. Nature is just so beautiful sometimes. I mean, not right now. This makes me want to warm the globe faster, but I don't know, eat some fucking tree bark or something. A novel anomalous force has been affecting wildlife worldwide. While the specifics of the effects on these animals are borderline unpredictable, there are some recurring symptoms. The morphology of the animal twists and distorts into a nightmarish, seemingly random visage. The creature can lose or sprout additional limbs, sense organs, teeth, anything. Not only that, but it appears some pieces of their morphology can split open, revealing new structures like a giant maw. The process takes place slowly over time, and is evidently incredibly painful for the animal in question, as they shriek a constant dull moan that does nothing to drown out the horrific snapping and creaking of their bones like old hardwood floors as they reshape in nonsensical ways. So far, the phenomena has been documented affecting giraffes, birds, deer, bear, sheep, rhino, dog, and various sea animals. Not only does the morphology of the animal change, but the behavior as well. The condition changes every animal it affects into a reckless and aggressive carnivore. These photographs of the anomalous wildlife event were taken by investigator Leovincible, who decided that the Anomalous Containment Foundation's rules and regulations work better as fireplace material than reading material. Giving the finger to the paranormal government is a dirty job, but someone's gotta do it. While the cause of this plague upon the fauna of Earth is yet unknown, we can still theorize on what the possible cause might be. I initially believed that this might be the work of somebody supernaturally talented, representing humanity's sins against the natural world by using animals as a living canvas. Maybe as some sort of protest piece against environmental damage. I know what you're thinking. Doesn't disfiguring animals as a symbolic statement for ecosystem destruction go against the very reason they'd been doing it? Yeah, but like, have you ever talked to a human? They're walking contradictions. Half of them tweet about how bad child labor is from their smartphones the second they get them hot off the child labor factory line. Sure, we could guess it's some sort of curse, or a metaphysical manipulation from a supernatural source, or perhaps some energy leaking in from another dimension, but there's little to no evidence for those ideas. Aside from just suspension of disbelief. So, I guess it's back to the drawing board. While information about this phenomena on the internet is scarce to say the least, there is a popular theory floating around about what's making these animals into literal fucking monsters. The theory is that this is caused by a virus making rapid zoonotic shifts between species. This virus causes genetic sequence disturbances in the form of virus-induced gene mutations. These virus-induced mutations are not fully understood by human scientists, and are probably due to the insertions of fragments of viral DNA into the host chromosomes. Essentially, the virus corrupts the DNA of the animal, and for some reason that we don't fully understand yet, the animal's body begins to act as some sort of horrific physiology randomizer, morphing the poor creature's form to look like some sort of Cronenberg Mr. Potato Head for limbs and sense organs. Question is, if it is a virus, what happens when the virus makes the shift to mankind? While the virus theory is all well and good, if you're a fan of my show for some reason, first off, get therapy, and second, you may have noticed a parallel between these dumb broken animals and some other dumb broken animals documented by a different investigator. This parasite would make sense as the cause for this new unnatural habitat phenomena, as it severely affects both the morphology and the behavior of its host. Although its favorite target is bird, it's gone after larger animals like deer and even people. I believe that Leo's documentation of these unnatural animals may be further examples of different forms of this lamprey parasite. I know what you're saying. You don't make no gosh darn sense, eyeball man. That doesn't explain the growth in limbs and the entire body rearrangement of many of these types of animals. Well, you stupid fuck. That's where the virus theory comes back into play. If this lamprey were to carry pathogens of its own, it's possible that these pathogens could also make the same zoonotic shift just as rapidly, if not more rapidly than the worms. It looks as though the invasive species of lamprey hasn't been wearing its condoms, and if it tries to worm its way inside of humans again, that virus sounds like your problem too. See, we can both win. Both theories can be right, except they're not. They're both wrong, because none of this was canon and I made it all up. Except for the parts that I stole. A newly developed anomalous parasite has recently been found in the blood of several individuals in multiple major cities of Australia. Less than 48 hours afterwards, this novel parasitic worm was discovered in almost all nations on Earth, signifying that this disease either spreads at an incredible pace or was somehow avoiding human detection for enough time to extend throughout the globe. The parasite is a roundworm, dubbed Neurophagous cognitophid, also known to the commoner as mind maggots. This worm infiltrates the human brain and drastically affects behavior. First, in simple, indirect ways, like manipulating hormones, the patient becomes more reclusive and aggressive. In the first few days of infection, this could be seen as just a bad mood, but as it progresses, the individual gets more paranoid about other people. Eventually, they avoid human contact completely, and will often take to barricading themselves in a small, dark room. At this stage, if caught, the infestation can be cured with a new medical treatment known as pulling a fucking worm out of their head. Although, this is made incredibly difficult because the individual avoids human intervention at all costs. Also disturbing about this parasitic roundworm is that upon further investigation, the organism appears to be man-made. A chimera abomination featuring the DNA of several different organisms, including parasitic roundworms, tapeworms, pinworms, flatworms, leeches, several species of annelids, and strangest of all, a series of jawless fish, most heavily the lamprey. While this screams intelligent intervention, no suspects have been identified to date. But I'm just gonna keep electrocuting random biology doctorates until I find out who did it. At first, the worm only affects behavior, causing the individual to become erratic and aggressive around people. They retreat to an isolated, damp, dark area so the infestation can progress. Slowly, the worm grows by feeding on the host's tissue, and when ready, it travels to the brain and begins to metamorphosis into an adult.
They grow up so fast. I'm not crying, you're crying, fuck you.
The adult form of this parasite is more along the lines of a beetle. After it gradsterbates from pupa, the specimen begins to consume the human brain, resulting in even more erratic behavior. At this stage, there has never been a successful attempt at removing the parasite without killing the patient.
I mean, we got it out, but he's dead as shit, man.
The beetle then hooks into the nervous system of the host, taking the place of the brain, leaving the former human being no more. The next stage of the disease is the most unsettling so far. And I just told you the part where a beetle eats someone's fucking brain, so that's saying something. The beetle dislodges from the nervous system of the individual, which results in them collapsing. It travels out of the empty skull and down the spine. The visuals for this are unsettling, to say the least. An alien lump under the skin that moves with an unnerving scuttle. The beetle's legs writhe underneath the epidermis, resulting in a repeated sickening squelch of wet flesh as it travels all the way to the base of the tailbone. From the poo hole to the brain, it lays a massive cluster of eggs, a grotesque lump that encompasses the entirety of the spine and spinal cord. Nature is just so beautiful sometimes. I mean, not right now. This makes me want to set fire to the entirety of Yellowstone National Park, but I don't know, watch a horse give birth or something. After laying the eggs, the beetle returns to the empty skull cavity, and the individual reawakens. However, they reawaken paralyzed. For several days, the former person lays on the ground as the beetle fuses with the spinal cord, after which, the eggs begin to hatch. Thousands of worms begin to consume the entirety of the host, other than their external features and the most vital of organs. The worms are plastic and elastic like muscle, and are capable of transmitting impulses. They use their nature to replace the entirety of the musculature and nervous system. They connect to their mother and give a more nuanced and complete control of the body to the beetle. A family that consumes a host together stays together. It is at this point that the movements and behaviors become incredibly difficult to detect as uncanny. Although, if one looks close enough at a host, they'll notice a nauseating wriggling under the skin, where the worms writhe to move the body. While this might sound horrifying, I bet $100 at least one of you finished to that sentence. The blood, saliva, urine, even the air in the lungs becomes saturated with the eggs of these creatures, making these nests a walking terminal of transmission vectors. Speaking of disease transmission vectors, what makes this parasite so threatening is that it has the capacity to spread from person to person via almost any known means. The eggs are light and hardy enough to travel on air. The parasites are right at home in almost any fluid. When introduced to a biologically active body of water like a pond, lake, or ocean, the worms will hatch, and possibly due to their lamprey ancestry, they can survive indefinitely by consuming the blood of other creatures in the water. However, they've only shown to take root in human hosts, which they actively seek the second they spring from their weird squishy frog eggs. If you thought that shit was gross and horrifying, just wait until you see the ramifications of a completed infection. Eventually, when a population has been saturated enough with these hosts, the hosts will begin to congregate. The beetles release pheromones, attracting all other worm hives in the area. The worms restructure the physiology of their hosts. The top of the skull fractures with a sickening crunch and opens from the middle of the chin like a Venus flytrap. What was once the beetle matriarch, in its extended stay fused with the host neurology. It has swollen to the size of the brain it consumed, its limbs atrophied, and the being left was nothing more than a pulsating mass of softened exoskeleton. The worms begin to eat the skin that kept them together, dissolving the body and cradling their matriarchs to the ground slowly. The worms then carry their beetles to an isolated area en masse, devouring any living thing they come across. Once they find a suitable place, they spin a large cocoon that has a fleshy consistency, and it immediately fills with fluid. Human authorities are quick to dispatch any of these on site, as this looks, to use the scientific term, like you're absolutely fucked. Because of this shoot first, ask questions later attitude, there has never been any observed parasite activity past this. However, when human researchers examined the material from the popped flesh bubble, it looked as though a massive, undeveloped arthropod was suspended in the cocoon, almost like it was gestating. Oh boy, wow, I sure wonder what would happen if it finished gestating. A novel species of anomalous entity has recently been found living in the bowels of the underbelly. This creature, hereby known as the Corpse King, is a compound organism made up of multiple different human beings and a larva-like entity. However, the true Corpse King is not actually the combination of human bodies you see before you, but instead, a massive parasite lurking within the unholy chimera's bowels. The underbelly is a liminal space dimension consisting of subterranean structures like catacombs, sewers, and subways that people can find themselves trapped in by exploring a bit too deeply underground and getting lost. While most don't notice that they've left Earth right away, they begin to understand the gravity of their situation when they find out the side effects of tapeworms down here. This creature starts as many life forms do, The noble egg. This egg hatches after a few days, and the worms proceed with their first stage of life, the aquatic stage. In this stage, the worms live in the water and feed on detritus, waste products, and other small life forms in the underbelly, until it grows from microscopic to a few centimeters long. From here, the parasite stops eating and waits for a human wanderer to enter the water. Upon detection of a human being, the corpse king will rapidly swim towards the person and attempt to enter through any orifice or open wound submerged in the water. Because the person isn't usually in the shit water on purpose, these entrances are typically below the waist, so they often enter up through the poo or pee holes.
Nature is just so beautiful sometimes. I mean, not right now. This makes me think we should upgrade and start putting macroplastics in the ocean. But I don't know, man. Eat some sticks.
In the second stage of the corpse king life cycle, it acts like an especially fearsome tapeworm. After the parasite enters the host, it will attach itself to the outer lining of the intestine and begin leaching nutrients from any pre-digested food that the wanderer consumes, as well as the host itself. It will continue to feed and grow until it's around 3 feet in length. At this point, the victim has a noticeable distended potbelly that squirms in an unnerving fashion. The host doesn't seem to mind this though, nor do they any of the grotesque gastrointestinal symptoms related with the parasite, as the worm releases hormones that tell the human brain that it is in utter bliss. And it loves the fact that it always has diarrhea. This psychological hold is so severe that humans have even been recorded expressing affection towards the worm and protecting it from harm.
I mean, it was cool when you were just into worms, but now I feel like it's your whole personality.
Oh, I see the problem. You misunderstand. The worms are working their way into me.
After the worm cements its psychological hold over the host, the parasite will again cease feeding and growing momentarily, while it manipulates its host to seek out another wanderer. The corpse king can't reach the final stage of its life cycle until it finds one more person. When it finally does cross paths with an unlucky individual, the worm springs from the original host's mouth and latches onto the face of the second person. It burrows into the eye and targets the brainstem. Within a matter of minutes, the second host is completely paralyzed, but still alive. After this, the worm exits the second host and slithers back into the original. They drag off the corpse of the second victim into a dark, damp place. At this point, the host lays on top of the dead body, and the worm exits the shell of a person. It produces a thick, stringy silk, not cum, that it uses to encompass both itself and the two corpses. It will remain in this cocoon for 1 month, until they emerge as a full-grown corpse king.
They grow up so fast.
A fully grown corpse king adult is the unholy amalgamation of 3 beings. The new form keeps much of the external anatomy of the 2 people the same, with some key differing features. For one, the new chest cavities have burst in several places, where the intestines of the creature leak out. The parasite is so large that it pushes the internal organs out of the body to make room for itself. These intestines are part of the worm itself, as they fused during the metamorphosis. Pro tip, if you need to kill it, stab the wiggly bits. Much of its biomass has been reallocated to the support torso. As you can see, its fingers and toes are much hardier than that of a traditional Homo sapien. And if you see its arms and legs, they definitely deserve a goddamn.
Where's the drawing from the back?
The creature took most of this biomass from the top torso during its metamorphosis, and has modified what remained of it into a contorted set of armed jaws. At the top of these jaws lies the skulls of both amalgamated individuals. As an adult, the Corpse King acts as a scavenger and predator to many life forms in the underbelly. Most of the horrific things about this monster are how it gets to become a monster, not what it actually does after. At this stage, it's really no different than a bipedal lion or a land shark. Just a big old predator, like Jared. This era of its life is the reproductive stage, and it will consume biomass to be converted into eggs. It will continue to do this until it dies, whether that be by starvation, gunshot, or AIDS because it's in the sewer. And they all lived happily ever after, unless they were one of those 2 people who got amalgamated, or literally anyone else but the worm. The end. Anyways, if you like this video and want to see more of what goes on in the underbelly, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with all notifications enabled, or I'll throw you in the sewer. I want to thank Dead Rex for drawing these spooky critters. Shout out the Inner Circle. Love y'all.